idea. It was working fine.
It was. I don't know what happened.
It just all of a sudden.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. We got Christine coming in, hopefully another way. Appreciate your patience. And we will edit this video when we get ready to share this. And here she is, and she's coming in, and Lord willing that this is going to work. Assign to guest one, and camera, guest one. There you are. Let me zoom out a little bit.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
I guess if I'm involved, technology is not a good thing.
Second, we can do some technical how to and not tos. Okay. All right.
It's not on Facebook.
It is. You have to refresh it.
Yeah, I'm texting on it.
Okay, somehow I got to get you. All right.
Can she put it down somewhere?
No, it's not that.
Lord help us.
This is fun, isn't it?
Can I tell a joke?
Yeah, Christine, you got a good joke while we're waiting?
I have one. I just learned this one.
Victoria's going to tell a joke.
Okay, I'm gonna tell a joke. So, how do you? Oh man. Okay,
Just like
so I think it's.
forgot.
So, how do you space a room? Yeah, how do you space a room?
I have no idea.
Yep, she did it. That was good. Okay, your turn.
Okay, I've got this.
Oh wait, I'm so sorry. I did it wrong. You plan it. I'm very behind. Sorry.
It's the video effects.
It's the video
window
effects.
is disappeared on me, and it's probably over here somewhere.
Boy, people are being really patient with us. What's another joke?
You want me to just go over some ADA stuff with just audio?
Yeah, let's do that, and I will bring up a a logo here up at the stop. Unmute everyone. There we go.
Can I hang up the phone?
Okay.
No, we need the phone. You might need to mute your computer.
Does that work?
That works great.
Okay.
Nice.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So shall we just start on what we were going to talk about?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about give a brief overview of what the Americans with Disabilities Act is, and then we'll get into the titles. And there'll be some funny things going on the screen while we do this, and then hopefully things will kind of settle in here in a moment.
Well, I appreciate it, Michael.
Oh, I appreciate you. Then how did we just lose her?
You lost her again?
Yeah, we lost her.
It could be her.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you know she's having some weather problems over there, so she may be going in and out, and we might get to reschedule this. But for right now, I'm not giving up. And here at Disability Connections, that's the cool thing about it. We don't give up. We keep working, and keep trying. So. Yes, we can hear you now.
I cannot hear her.
But we can't hear you right now. Actually, I need you to click on that link again on your phone. Yeah. I'm so sorry, Christine. You're being wonderful. Do me a favor, just unplug this monitor for a minute. It's
made things worse.
It's made things worse, unfortunately. Yeah. Come on. There we go. Yeah. Can you send her a link again?
Which one?
The eChem
Through the phone?
through the phone.
Are we still live?
Yeah. Yeah, we
Okay,
are.
here's another joke. When is it time to go to the dentist?
Wow.
Tooth hurty.
2:30. That is a good one.
Okay, one
All
more.
right, here she comes. All right. Yeah.
Did you hear about the two guys who stole a calendar? They both got 6 months.
That's a good one too.
Oh, it's still zoomed in like crazy. Okay, I'm getting rid of that. There we go. We need a new overlay.
How do you make a tissue dance? Put a little boogie in it.
That is terrible. Okay, Christine, we got you on.
Should we just switch to Victoria telling jokes?
I'm not very good at holding the phone, obviously. Let's see here. Let me try something.
Oh,
That
that's
works.
great.
Okay. So I don't remember where I left off there, but a person has to fall under the definition of disability. So the definition is very important. The definition of who is covered is a person with a disability uh, who has a mental or physical impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Major life activities are things like seeing, hearing, walking, talking, taking care of yourself, sleeping, concentrating. There's no list of disabilities. There is no list of major life activities. And then I think we've talked about that. So the coverage of the ADA is people who have a disability, people who have a history of a disability, people who are regarded as having a disability. And, sometimes it isn't a limitation, but people perceive it that way. So the coverage extends to people who might have a difference in the way they're walking or the way they're talking or something like that, but it really isn't a limitation. But those people are perceived as having a disability, so therefore they are covered. And also, it extends coverage to people who are related to or associated with a person with a disability, which would be our families, our friends, our coworkers. Various people who are closely related to us sometimes can experience discrimination as well. Now, we've been talking about the 5 titles. First thing you have to figure out is, are you covered? The second thing, you need to know whether or not the activity is covered. And frankly, this is a very comprehensive, broad-based law that covers Title I covers employment, Title II covers state and local government services, Title III covers public accommodations, which is almost everything. Are we still together here?
Yes, we are. We're riding and rolling.
My computer did something weird. So anyway, Title 4 is telecommunications, which there are a lot of specifics about the relay systems and things like that in that title. And Title 5 is miscellaneous. We're going to go over each of the titles briefly. And remember, if you have further questions or you want to discuss these things further, you can call the Southeast ADA Center at 1-800-949-4232. That's 1-800-949-4232. And those of us who provide technical assistance would be happy to chat with you. Okay, we're going to start with employment. Oh, I'd just like to say the goal of the ADA had to have equal opportunity for people with disabilities. It is to provide us the opportunity to have self-sufficiency and full participation. And my having full participation not only affects my life, but it also affects the life of my friends, my coworkers, my family, my children, my grandchildren. So full participation, I think everybody should be able to expect that. And also my opportunity to have independent living. So employment, that is Title I. It covers all aspects of employment. The application, the interview, the essential functions of the job, the benefits and privileges of the job, and job sponsored recreational activities. All of that needs to be considered. Some people are very hesitant to bring up to their employer that they have a disability. You do not have to reveal anything about your disability until you have received a conditional job offer. If everybody who gets that job offer has to have a physical, then that includes people with disabilities. You are able to discuss the options of reasonable accommodation at any point in the process or at any point during your employment. Title I also covers employers with 15 or more employees. So if you've got a little tiny mom and pop, complying with the ADA is the right thing to do, and you're probably going to get an excellent employee. However, you are not covered under the law if you have 15 or fewer employees.
And Christine, I think that's a really good point. But I can tell you, even us as a Center for Independent Living, we're under 15 employees. But I can tell you that everything that we've done to accommodate has had benefits. It's had blossoming opportunities and discovery of great employees. And so I think that's really important. And if you've got any examples or any stories of some, in regards to employment and as you go along, that would be great. But I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know we kind of got things kind of rolling here, and I think you're doing great. If you can if you can move your phone over just a little bit, there we go. Yep, that was better. Back the other way.
No, I'm technologically challenged.
There we go. That's great.
Okay, so the thing about reasonable accommodations. Now, some reasonable accommodations are expensive, but the vast majority of reasonable accommodations are low cost. If a company it has cost for disability accommodations or for making their business more accessible, they can recoup part of that on their taxes. So people are afraid of that sometimes, but it's not really the case. I have had people ask for something as simple as a stool at a cash register. They could still perform the essential functions of the job, but due to their disability, they were not able to stand for lengthy periods of time. And that really makes no sense. A stool. And people with disabilities make great employees because it's too hard to get a job. So people with disabilities tend to stay with a job because it's just too hard to leave. People with disabilities make great, loyal employees. All the law says is that people with disabilities deserve fair consideration. It doesn't say you have to hire a person because they have a disability. It simply says a person with a disability deserves fair consideration. It doesn't require that anybody be hired. It doesn't require any kind of preference. It just says fair consideration. And that seems pretty minimal.
Absolutely. And I had a question in our chat here. Somebody asked, how do you recommend bringing up reasonable accommodations with your employer?
Well, in an ideal world, it should just be a simple thing. I am visually impaired. I have to use public transit. Public transit doesn't arrive at the appropriate time for me to be here right at 8. However, I will arrive at 8:15 and I will work till 5:15. You know, I'm not taking any hours away from my work period. I simply have to utilize public transportation for my because of my visual impairment. It should not be a negative confrontational thing. Most employers, especially larger employers, should really understand that they just need to listen and they need to consider it. But, there's no accounting for some people. Sometimes you're going to get a negative response. Sometimes a person needs something like a quiet place to take a break periodically. As long as you work the required hours, then they should be able to provide you with that quiet place to take a break. If you have a service animal, I need to take my service animal out periodically. So you just have to fit that into your schedule. You're not taking anything away from your employment. You are simply asking for an accommodation for your disability to allow you to work.
Does it, I guess maybe in regards to like a larger corporation, would it be important to possibly put that request in writing?
A lot of times it is a really good idea to have good documentation. We hope that nothing negative is going to happen, but if you have good documentation of how you requested it, when you requested it, who you requested it to, either copies of written documents, a log that you keep, just put the date and the time and who you talked to, then just in case it doesn't go well, you'll have that documentation if you have to file a complaint. But there's no special words you have to use, no special way you have to do it. Your employer cannot ask for all of your medical records or a lot of personal medical history. They can only ask for a justification if it's not visible, for a justification that you in fact do need an accommodation. For example, if I roll in my wheelchair, I don't have to prove I need a grab bar in the bathroom. But if I have an invisible disability and there is something that an accommodation that I need, I might have to have just a very brief statement from a physician or a counselor or a therapist that this is required because of my disability, but not intrusive information about your medical condition.
Gotcha. Very, very good. Pause with me just a moment. I'm going to switch over here and we're going to do something to make you look even better because I think you're incredible. And I'm not just saying that. And let's do this real quick. And Christine. And there we go. It's doing the same thing. And you know what?
Well, Michael, I'm old. It's pretty hard to make me look better.
We have a question from the studio gallery here, and I'm just going to do you like this. There we go. We'll keep going, but we'll go back and forth. Somebody has a question. You want to tell me what that question is, or you got it for me?
Yeah. Chat.
Okay. Here it comes. A question from the chat, and as we move along, and I see that we've got 7 people on, and I'm so excited. Let me see if I can click on that and see if it shows me anything where I can see the information. Here we go. Do building rules or regulations overwrite ADA laws?
Well, as far as protection for people with disabilities, the law that provides the greatest protection for the person with a disability takes precedence. So if you have state law, if it is stronger than the ADA, then the state law holds precedence. If the federal law is stronger, then the federal law takes precedence.
Like one example, and the responder mentioned in regards to service animals, and I think I know a little bit about what's going on with that situation. Is that it's a medium-sized employer that basically pushed back after the request was made to use a service animal, and just kind of asked them to not bring the service animal and tried to offer other accommodations. And I think that's kind of what that situation was about.
Well, service animals, there's an element to ADA compliance, and then some people just don't like dogs. And that is no reason to tell a person they cannot bring their service animal. In most working environments, there are ways to work around any issues, even in food service areas. So it's got to be an interactive process. It's got to be a negotiation. Everybody has got to enter this in good faith and try to work it out. It is hard.
It is hard, and I think in this particular example that it was a business office, law firm type situation, and I think a lot of clientele that would come in there, and I think the fear is how people would react to a service animal, and would that be unreasonable for them to accept? Basically they're asking for that it's unreasonable for them to have the dog because their clients would be fearful of that dog. What do you think about that? That's a hard one. Sorry about the curveball.
No problem. But generally, service animals, if they are true service animals, they are always under the control of their owner. They are very non-invasive. They don't. A true service animal is going to be laying by the person. They are going to be quiet. They're not going to be getting up. They are just going to be laying there. And if you have a dog that is running around wildly and sniffing at people, then that might trigger people who are afraid of dogs. But the way a service animal should be behaving should not be threatening to anyone.
Very good point. Thank you for that. And the commenter said thank you. All right.
And, I'd just like to remind everybody, if they want to talk about this further, 1-800-949-4232. And there's 3 of us who do technical assistance, and we'd be happy to chat with you about it. The only reason that you do not have to comply with Title I is if complying would be an undue hardship. But an undue hardship is not something you can just say, well, this would be an undue hardship. You have to really evaluate that carefully. That is not an easy requirement to meet. Also, would it be a fundamental alteration of what you do? Sometimes there are situations that it could fundamentally alter the nature of what is being done. In those instances, that is a defense. Or you do not have to comply with Title I if it would be a direct threat to the health and safety of others. The ADA is not unreasonable. It is simply saying that if these things can happen the way they should happen, then we are allowing an individual to be productive, be in the workforce, be a tax-paying citizen. It's not, the law is not unreasonable. It's just some people need further education. Let me just say that.
Gotcha. And I just wanted to share, again, 1-800-949-4232. Is that correct? And
That is
I can tell you, as a Center for Independent Living, we have used you guys so much. And I think the worst thing that we can do is to pretend that we know what we're talking about, because I can tell you, even when we call the Southeast ADA, is that they give us information, what they know, but they'll say, I'm going to research that, or I'll get back with you on that, or may suspend that answer until they've researched it. So the way they provide information is powerful. It's incredible, and we use it all the time, and we do recommend people call all the time. So I know you guys are very busy, and we appreciate that. Yeah.
And we enjoy it. And how many jobs can you do for 32 years and learn every day?
Right.
It's wonderful.
So
So
that was title which title was that?
that was Title One,
Title 1.
and that covers employment.
Okay.
And that is the federal enforcement agency. There is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. We will go to Title II. It is state and local government. The requirement for state and local government is program access. So it's not quite the same. They have to evaluate whether every program that they offer is as accessible as possible to individuals with disabilities. This does not require that state and local governments make everything immediately accessible, but it does require that the programs are accessible. Now, understanding they have had 32 years to
Long
think
time.
about.
Yeah.
So more and more of the actual facilities should be accessible after 32 years. And it also requires effective communication, which could be sign language interpreters, video remote interpreting, scribes, written materials. There's a vast array of ways that you can provide effective communication. So state and local government. Sorry, I've got an itchy cough.
I understand.
State and local governments you have to view them in their entirety. Everybody knew everything couldn't immediately be accessible. Section 504 covered anything receiving federal funding, but it wasn't descriptive enough to allow people to comply with that. And people who got the paperwork for 504 tended just to check a box. Let's check a box. Oh, yes, we comply. But the ADA stepped in and explains people what 504 compliance is supposed to look like. So it has made it much more effective. So Title II entities, state and local government have to have program access. And that means everything they do, employment, public meetings, court activities, police, fire, voting, emergency management, parks and recreations, websites, everything that state and local government does. I feel like what we as people with disabilities need to do, and people who work in the disability arena, is we need to try to provide information first, because honestly, many of them don't realize they're not in compliance. But we do have to tackle this because it's very important. Because, for example, if I can't go to the playground, I can't take my grandchildren to the playground. They don't have disabilities, but they need to go to the playground, and grandma may need to take them. So there are impacts to this beyond what people recognize. The first thing they need to consider is removing barriers to existing things, removing barriers to parks, consider access into the playgrounds. It doesn't all have to be accessible equipment, but I should be able to get in there. Sometimes you have to move a program to an existing facility that is accessible. But believe you me, people are not going to want to do that. For example, do you think a judge wants to leave the courthouse and go to the rec center because the rec center is accessible to hold court? No, they don't want to do that. So we need to consider accessibility in all these places. I need to be able to park at the courthouse. I need to get into the door. I need to be able to get into the courtroom. I need to be able to use the restroom. All of those things. I need to be able to get in there to pay my taxes. To sometimes get license tags, whatever. I just am a regular person with a regular life, and I need to be able to access these governmental facilities. Sometimes you have to consider providing the program in a different way. Many children with disabilities will be able to access the regular programs, but sometimes you might have to change things up or maybe even provide a different program. But the main concept here is mainstreaming people with disabilities into all the programs that everybody else uses. We want to provide full, independent participation for people with disabilities while minimizing the cost for the government. Does the ADA allow special persons for people with programs for people with disabilities? Yes, that is perfectly fine to have a special program, but you can't force people with disabilities to use that special program if they can meet the eligibility requirements for the regular program and they can participate in that with their peers, their friends, their family, etc. And this all requires evaluations on a case by case basis. People don't like to consider things on a case by case basis. They just don't like that. It's hard for them. People want to have a book that tells them exactly what to do in every situation, and it just doesn't exist. Just
We lost your audio a little bit there. We can't hear you. I'm sorry. And things were rolling along. Let's see. You're not muted.
alteration.
There we go. We got audio. You were out for a little
I'm
bit,
sorry.
and then you came back.
I'm sorry. Okay, defenses. If you do not have to comply with Title II, if it would be a fundamental alteration of the program or activity, nobody is asking you to alter your program. Would it result in an undue administrative or financial burden? Usually not, but that can happen. I want to remind you also that public entities are held to a very high standard. So it's not quite as easy for them to get off the hook. But some things happen, and some people with disabilities are unreasonable. Most are reasonable. They just want the opportunity to participate, but occasionally people aren't. So, number one, you have to carefully evaluate things on a case by case basis, and you also have to think of alternatives. If you can't do exactly what the person wants, is there a way you can do something that would make it better? New construction, there are issues with new construction that are very tricky. Sometimes architects and designers and engineers don't know the law. Unfortunately, I have calls from those people all the time. I am not an architect, I am not an engineer, but I have learned from the United States Access Board what access is, and I've had many decades of personal experience. A lot of times I can identify a solution to a barrier more easily and more cheaply than an architect or an engineer. That's why those of us who work at the ADA Center and in the independent living centers are valuable resources for our community. We can often just give them alternatives. And they do not understand that if they comply with the local building code, it does not necessarily mean that they comply with federal law. That makes it complicated for us. It sometimes makes people very frustrated. So tackling this in the most positive way that we can is a great idea.
I'd like to add to that in regards to reaching out to the Southeast ADA, and I think it's great. And you all have a lot of individuals with disabilities working in your program and your networks. And I would say also that the Centers for Independent Living are a great resource to as you're trying to work through some of your ADA guidelines and your plans, definitely use the Southeast ADA, but recruit your Center for Independent Living to bring individuals out. But I can tell you that some folks have done letter of the law in the very beginning, and I've stumbled across with my wife and I, and she uses a power chair, and we've noticed that some things in the process of them just beginning, or they have started something, we made some suggestions to them that were just extremely powerful, because later on it's like, wow, everybody with disabilities now can know where that access route is to get across the little pathway into the front of the stores. And this couple businesses, or at least the property manager, made those changes because we asked. But from a technical standpoint, it's great to include people, especially before you do it. And we've got some great examples we'll share down the road of how that kind of made it possible. But yeah, I think getting connected as a business or an individual or as a person with a disability, encouraging you guys to reach out to the Southeast ADA, and as well as reach out, maybe partner with your center to get people with disabilities on site to kind of test things out. It's just vital because we make a pretty large percentage of the population that could be entered into your business. So I think it's vital for business.
Absolutely. It makes good business sense to comply. In most cases, it is not hard to comply. And I'll tell you, we at the ADA Center refer people to our Centers for Independent Living every single day because we value what you do in your local communities and that people connect with you, because there's probably more that you can help them with than just the problem they're having. Association with you will help in many ways. Okay, so we'll go on to public accommodations, and that's almost everything. Covers most every private business of any size. Even if you only have 2 employees, you're still covered as a public accommodation while you may not be as an employer. It requires all of the basics of non-discrimination, of equal opportunity, and in existing, I mean, there is a strict code for new construction, but everything else is covered under readily achievable barrier removal, which sometimes we jokingly say is cheap and easy, but a lot of times it is. It really is. And you're going to get a whole array of new customers because there are way over 60 million people with disabilities in the United States. I don't know the current statistic. This is not a law that was designed to hurt any business. It was not designed to put anybody out of business. It just brings you in additional customers. You have family, friends, coworkers. About 1 in 5 of every person in the United States has a disability. And there are these tax credits and tax deductions that you can take advantage of. So, for example, if you had a change you needed to make that was larger than the tax deduction for this year, you could do part of it this year, receive the tax credit or tax deduction this year, and then you could put the rest of it off until after January 1st and receive an additional tax credit or tax deduction for the following year. So they've really tried to make it as easy as possible. Public entities are required to provide auxiliary aids and services as necessary to ensure that everybody can participate and enjoy the goods and service, unless it's an undue burden. And there are many, many ways to provide communication access now that, for example, somebody needs a 15-minute transaction. That may not warrant a 2-hour minimum on an interpreter, depending on the transaction. You have to evaluate, and that is what we were saying about individual consideration. And as far as a business goes, I would keep documentation of what I had done and what the request was, just in case somebody filed a complaint, because you can refuse without it being against the law. It just depends on the particular services that are requested. And a person with a disability does not have to be included if they would be a direct threat to the health or safety of others. So we go on to telecommunications.
And
Covers-
telecommunications is under what title?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Title IV.
Title 4. Okay.
And it has been further supported by additional law, but it covers telephone, television access for people with sensory and speech disabilities,
Okay.
and extremely critical for full participation. There are many ways to accomplish that, and as time goes on, there become more and more ways because of electronics and all these things that I certainly don't understand. But they do help. And I don't know if there's anything else we want to say there. But like I say, we do have the telecommunication part in the ADA and also the Telecommunications Act.
Okay. Okay. So that was title number 4.
4.
So yeah. So and I do have one question of where one thing fits in, but let's hear about Title 5.
Okay, Title V is miscellaneous provisions.
Okay.
And most laws have that title or these requirements in a law. It's a pretty basic thing. But the couple of really main things here is it primarily extends coverage to Congress and the legislative agencies. Sometimes they exclude themselves. And that's very important because we have the right to participate in the American process. And it also, which is very important, provides protection from any kind of retaliation or harassment against people who are seeking their rights under this law, and also others, excuse me, who are assisting people in seeking their rights under this law. We have the right to be protected under this civil rights law and have these options and opportunities in the United States of America. And people like your Center for Independent Living and many others across the United States have every right to help individuals with disabilities do that.
Yeah, that's great. Have kind of an additional question, and I don't know if it ties to Title V, and I'd like to know which title it fits in. And we're going to be talking later this week about nursing home transition and what kind of brought that all together that the Centers for Independent Living have gotten involved in, and the whole money follows the person. And I think all that derives from the court case of the Olmstead case regarding the most integrated setting clause. And I was kind of curious of where that is. And that is another theme that we're going to have throughout the week, because we're going to talk about technology in order to keep people in their own homes, keep them out of institutions, and try to be included. Because I heard that theme in several of the titles. Where does that lie?
Well, number one, it is really super great to have a Supreme Court decision that supports our rights. Those, while they're sometimes difficult to achieve, they hold such a great standard for people to lean on. Nursing homes sometimes can be Title II, receiving state and federal funding. So they are held to a higher standard. They receiving federal funds is a very important consideration. Many nursing homes are private, so they are Title III entities as a business, and some of them don't receive any federal funding. Sometimes you can be covered under both titles. Also, sometimes, which we had an instance here in Mississippi, nursing homes can be totally owned, run, and operated by a church. They don't receive Medicaid, don't receive Medicare. They are totally operated by the church. Churches are exempt from coverage under the ADA because of the separation of church and state. Many, many years ago, my dear former boss, Mark Smith, and I worked on a case in Jackson, Mississippi, related to a woman who was in a nursing home. They did not allow power chairs or scooters in that nursing home. And so her only relative, her sister, was not allowed to visit her. And we worked on this and worked on this and worked on this. And honestly, Michael, our win was we went to the administration there and we said, is this the Christian thing to do?
Oh, yeah. I was about to say.
To deny this woman her sister. And they did allow her sister. So sometimes you got to use different ways to skin a cat,
As a matter of fact, it kind of makes sense sometimes to take that route first. Appeal to people's faith, appeal to people's common sense, and sometimes, the rules and regulations, don't have to even happen. And sometimes law keeps us from communicating, and that's what needs to happen first, is we need to communicate what our needs or what our desires are. It doesn't hurt to know what the law is behind the scenes, and knowing that, because sometimes people will turn it into a legal situation right away and say, I don't know if I should do this. Am I made to, or am I supposed to? Is it required by law? And then that's when you kind of spit that out. But yeah, in a situation like that, when the law doesn't apply, and I'm not sure if it should or shouldn't, that's a whole nother day, another discussion, but it is what it is. But you had the best solution of all, and that's actually appealing to, a sense of not only morality, ethics, but also just humanity. And I think that's a great example. Fantastic.
Yes. Well, and I think, and this is just my personal feeling, everybody's different, but I think as people in your business, people with disabilities, families of people with disabilities, as we move through this world, We need to try to encourage people to deal with this in a positive manner, with information, with the offer of help, with the offer of training, because honestly, some people don't understand and they don't know. If we cannot win there, then we have to move on to other remedies that are available to us and
Right.
move forward, because it impacts not only our lives, but the lives of everybody in the future.
Right.
We had a storm shelter here, and they asked me to do surveys, but sometimes they don't always want to know what you tell them. But I did point out that they had no emergency exit that was accessible. And, the day I drove by and that ramp in the back of that shelter was there, I was just so happy. And it may never be needed, but if it is, it's there.
Yeah, yeah, it's really great. And I always loved this thing when the malls were popular. Um, we would you have steps on the side, ramp in the middle, or ramps on the side, and guess where everybody walked?
The ramp.
The ramps. I want to go back to the employment title. We had one question that got asked a little bit later. And just see what your take on this was. But her question from Josephine is, what is the proper procedure the employer should do if the person became disabled during their employment?
You can request a reasonable accommodation at any time, and you still do not have to use any magic words. You have to be able to perform the essential functions of the job with or without a reasonable accommodation, and then suggest what you think would work. It is an interactive process, a negotiation with your employer. If you cannot be accommodated in the job you are currently doing, then they have to consider a reassignment to a vacant position that you can do with or without accommodations. Of course, you have to be qualified for that job. People make it difficult, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes a person cannot do any job that is available at their employer. And of course, I would recommend at that point, consider going to vocational rehabilitation. Vocational rehabilitation has the ability to retrain you through college or technical school to perform another kind of job that you can do with or without an accommodation, or speak to a Center for Independent Living who might be able to give you ideas and suggestions about how you can move forward.
Josephine, thank you so much for that question, and Christine, thank you for that answer. Um, we're extremely grateful, again, it kind of falls back on communication and making that effort. In most situations, I think people can be reasonable, but it is important, and I think this training will be. And what we hope to do is we might get excerpts. We might need to do a part B. I'm not sure. I would love for Christine to come back and do this with us again. And you've been valuable. Just putting it out there. If there are any other questions, put it down in the chat right now, either on Facebook or YouTube. We're actually streaming in 2 places. Forgive us for the technical issues. This was our first time out, and we had everything mapped out and planned out, and everything looked good, but then technology hits. And when we're trying to connect to Christine, who is many states away, it's bound and determined to have some issues. So we're going to get better at this as we go along. But
I'd be happy to join you anytime.
Oh, well, I'm going to take you up on that, and we might even try to do this again so you and I can maybe look a little better. Of course, you would look better if I wasn't on the screen with you. So you're just, you are terrific. I do think the world of you, Christine, and I have enjoyed so much getting to work side by side with you on many different projects. A lot of it over the phone, but in person is so much better. This is second best. Audio calls, that's I love hearing your voice on the conference calls, but this is wonderful. And hey, and if you call the ADA Southeast ADA, I'm gonna pop that number up one more time. If you call, you might reach Christine. But there are some other great staff folks that actually answer those calls and can kind of talk you through situations, from service dog situations to access, to businesses, employment issues, communication issues. It's really, really big. And one thing that we're going to do with all of our videos, we're going to make sure that they're all captioned, and we're going to use automatic caption. We're going to correct as much as possible. We're going to have a handful of live events this week, and I can't express and encourage you guys enough to join us online, whether you're watching this live or you're watching a post recording after maybe a few edits. We're very excited about this and the opportunities that we have to present more information, and have it at your fingertips. And the more that you watch, the more that you do, the more that you learn. But the key is make sure you have phone numbers like the one above, 1-800-949-4232 for the Southeast ADA Center. Or you can reach us at 478-741-1425, or our 800 number, 800-743-2117. I think I got that right. And definitely, connect with us online. Our main website is disabilityconnections.com, or you can join us online in our community at disabilityconnections.tv. So two places where you can reach us at and actually reach our staff and reach me, reach anybody. And so, again, thank you all for joining us live. It has been an experience, but needless to say, it's been fun. And the idea is we're going to continue doing this, and you're going to see some wonderful and great things, and you might see some funny, what do they call it, outtakes? Yeah, we got them. We got them today. So, but we're not upset with that. The main thing is, when disability has hurdles, life has hurdles, we all kind of have to jump over those. But the problem is, if we stop, and if we are afraid of embarrassment, and we are afraid of trying, or we're afraid of asking, or afraid of communicating my accessibility need in regards to the ADA or employment or access, you'd be surprised. People want to hear from you. And if you do it from your heart and share with how it relates to you, that's the where to start. But having the information in your mind, in your heart, your head, on paper, but also by phone, and research, it's there. The ADA is powerful, and it has made a huge difference in my life, and my wife's life, and my daughter's life, and employees here at Disability Connections in the Middle Georgia community and all over. I see evidences of how the ADA has impacted so many people in so many ways. And Christine, I know it has for you. I've heard so many great stories, and I can't wait to hear more. So thank you again for being with us.
Well, thank you, Michael. I really have enjoyed it. I'd love to help you anytime I can.
All right. Thank you, Christine. We'll see you again soon. And everybody keep looking for more events, and Christine will be back. Great.
Great.
Can't wait. We look forward to it.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, everybody. 32. Everybody take care.